Now that Cardano has arrived in the post-Vasil era and Ethereum is post-merge, some stark contrasts are emerging between the two leading smart contract blockchains. The first and most important is around whether you can experience monetary death just by participating in staking. In Cardano, you can participate in the validation of blocks added to the chain without fear of losing your delegation. This is not the case in Ethereum, and it seems that corporate entities are already noticing this extreme contrast in risk profile between the two blockchains. Ready? Today, we are going to discuss hints of a possible coming BMW Cardano partnership, a substantial slashing event in Ethereum on Friday, an update on the Ethiopian Ministry of Education project, a great article on Cardano and 51% attacks, and an update on Alessandro's Lucid project to extend Cardano to JavaScript. If you looked at this image and thought to yourself, that's nothing, you should see my bags of rugged NFTs. Or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Years ago, I was deciding what blockchain community I would become involved in, I would invest in, become a part of. Obviously, I landed on Cardano, but a big part of my thesis around Cardano versus blockchains like Ethereum had to do with slashing. It didn't make sense to me that if all other things were equal, it didn't make sense to me that the bulk of the consumers, the regular people, the retail investors, and also the corporate entities, the institutions, the companies, we would need them all for crypto to achieve this mass adoption we were looking for. It didn't make sense to me that they would ever choose a slashing protocol over a non-slashing protocol. I looked at it like this. Imagine we're going to start going to a restaurant every Friday night. We're going to go there every Friday night, every week out of the year. And there's two possible contenders for the restaurant we're going to go to. The food tastes similar at these two restaurants, right? All other things are equal. The service is good at both restaurants. The food tastes similar. Everything is similar, except at one of the restaurants, every 2 weeks, the chef comes out and he just stabs somebody. At the other restaurant, this doesn't occur, but at one of the two restaurants, the chef comes out from the back and he just randomly goes around and stabs somebody whose etiquette at the table he doesn't like. Sometimes he just stabs him in the finger. Sometimes he gets him in the hand. Sometimes he gets him in the arm. But sometimes he plunges his chef's knife directly into their heart and kills them. He takes not just a finger, a hand, an arm. He takes their entire life. And this happens on average about every 2 weeks. But the people who love this restaurant, they say, don't worry, just don't break any of the rules of etiquette that you should be observing at a dinner table. You'll be fine. There'll be no stabbings. Even given the assurances of the people who are proponents of this restaurant who say, don't worry, it's easy to observe the rules of etiquette, even given their enthusiasm for this restaurant. And let's say that restaurant with the stabby restaurant is crazy popular. It has many more patrons than the restaurant. Even given all of those factors, would you ever go to the stabby restaurant? You would never go. If every 2 weeks the chef comes out and stabs somebody, even if it's just a finger stabbing sometimes, if there's any stabbiness at all at that restaurant, you would never go to that restaurant. And that's what we're finding out about Ethereum versus Cardano. One of those two is a very stabby restaurant. While Ethereum will not kill you medically, no one is physically going to drive a chef's knife into your heart in Ethereum. It may kill you monetarily, economically. Here, Roman Pellerin of IOG puts it pretty concisely. He says, here we have punitive proof of stake protocols with slashing and penalties on misbehavior. Stakers' funds are locked, like Ethereum and Solana, versus positive proof of stake protocols, where things are merit-based. Stakers can redelegate to their stake pool at any time, favoring good behaviors like Cardano, and obviously there is no slashing. The reason why this is people are becoming acutely aware of this big difference between Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano is because we are seeing constant events like this. Here, this poster, Terrence.eth, points out, rest in peace, 20 validators slashed over the last 3 hours due to a tester equivocation. Can't find much info with the validator indices and deposit addresses. My guess is duplicated setups, forgetting of doppelganger detection. Here we have 20 validators slashed. Do you feel like you would have enough oversight over the validator you're staking with to know if they're engaging in a tester equivocation, if they are duplicating setups or forgetting about doppelganger detection? As any kind of a retail investor who's delegating your stake, you don't have that much oversight over the stake pools. You're just delegating and hoping, in Ethereum at least, that they don't make mistakes like this. Given that you don't have enough oversight, there's no way you could prevent this. You don't have any control over this. And the proponents of Ethereum are like the proponents of the stabby restaurant. They're like, hey, almost nobody gets stabbed. The chef comes out once every 2 weeks and he stabs one person. Sometimes he only stabs them in the finger. Not even an important finger. It's not like the thumb. It's not even always the thumb. Sometimes it's just like, a regular finger. So you really shouldn't worry because only one person gets stabbed every 2 weeks. Okay, sometimes the chef goes crazy and he stabs like 20 people, like he did here on Friday. But some of those were probably just finger stabs. They didn't even slash the whole steak. He didn't plunge the chef's knife into the heart of any of his customers on Friday. Maybe it was just a bunch of pinky stabs. What are you worried about? This restaurant's great. The food is excellent. Don't worry about the stabbiness. Almost no one gets stabbed, but it does occur once every 2 weeks or so on average, something like that. People are getting stabbed. No matter how enthusiastic people were about the food at that restaurant, you would never go to that restaurant. And that's the problem that Ethereum is encountering right now. No matter what small percentage of validators are getting slashed, just the possibility of a complete loss of your delegation or even a partial loss of your delegation is too extreme a risk when there are alternatives where you have no risk of the chef coming out of the back of the kitchen and stabbing anyone. You would much rather go to the restaurant where the chef never comes out and never stabs anybody. And as stark as this contrast seems for retail investors like you and I, it's an even bigger risk for larger institutions and corporate entities. Nobody in any large corporation wants to buy assets and stake them in a blockchain where the corporate entity could lose those assets. Nobody wants to put their job on the line just because some stake pool got slashed, because they committed a tester equivocation, some duplication of setups, some forgetting of doppelganger detection. Nobody wants to take the risk that the assets of some corporation they work for could get slashed in this manner. So corporations are going to be pretty slow to attach themselves in pretty much any way to Ethereum proof of stake, or at least a lot of corporations will. And we might already be seeing that in action. Here's one example that might represent a very large global corporation that is making decisions given the very different risk profiles of being involved with Ethereum versus being involved with Cardano. And we're going to go through this step by step so that you can understand exactly what happened. Here's a post from Mojo, who you might recognize from comments in this channel, comments to these Cardano Rumor Rundown videos. He posted this: what's happening here? twitter.com/BMW/status. But then you can see this tweet was deleted by the tweet author. So of course we had to find out, what is this tweet from BMW? Because maybe it has something to do with Cardano. So Mojo luckily had access apparently to a screenshot of this deleted tweet, and also gave us the original tweet that apparently prompted this response. So here's the original tweet. Breaking news, and this is all rumor. We're going to treat this as rumor at this point. So we're not saying this is factual. We're not saying this is something that's going to occur. We're going to put this in the category of rumor, but this is the Cardano Rumor rundown, so it's fitting for this channel. Breaking news, trusted source familiar to the matter whispered that hashtag BMW is contemplating using and investing into hashtag Cardano. Latest Q4, they will announce the decision to use a blockchain as proof of registration. So we do see rumors like this all the time. Sometimes they turn out to be true. Sometimes they're completely false, and we never hear anything else about them again. But in this case, there's a little bit more to the story. In this case, apparently, this was the deleted tweet that Mojo was referring to in his original post, which apparently was a reply to this post that we're putting in the category of rumor. But when you look at the response, if the BMW corporate Twitter profile at BMW responds, sorry, not sorry, to this post with hands up and a little winky emoticon, what can we assume? I don't think this is the kind of response you'd see from BMW if there was no truth to this rumor. I think you'd see them probably not responding to this or denying that this was the case. I don't think you'd see this tweet, sorry, not sorry. But it doesn't surprise me that an entity like a BMW would choose Cardano. I think corporate entities that are global, this large, they probably look at what's going on in Ethereum and they realize a lot of people, just given the riskiness of the Ethereum staking regime, a lot of people are going to be losing their delegation. That's the way the system is meant to run. People are supposed to lose their delegation when the stake pools make mistakes. I don't think any kind of corporate entity wants to attach their name to a blockchain where consumers are going to be punished in that manner, because a lot of people are going to get slashed in Ethereum. We're already seeing it happen. We saw those 20 validators get slashed on Friday, and there are going to be a lot of retail investors behind most validators who get slashed, who are going to be having a very bad day when that happens. Corporate entities don't want to be involved in that kind of thing. And we also saw from this original post, BMW is contemplating using and investing into Cardano. So if they're planning on using it as a blockchain as proof of registration, and they're also planning on investing into it, do you think anybody at BMW Global wants to be the person who was responsible for making the decision, we're going to invest into this blockchain? And then, who knows, a few months later, maybe they got slashed. If they get slashed and BMW's entire investment gets slashed, nobody wants to be the person who made that decision. But you've got this alternative, Cardano, where that's simply not possible. There's no chance of getting slashed. There's no slashing. How is any corporate entity going to choose choice A, where you could lose the company's entire investment, or choice B, where that's not possible? Every single corporate decision maker is going to choose choice B. Nobody wants to be on the hook for choice A if there's any possibility at all of the company's money getting slashed. It's monetary death. That would be institutional suicide if you're the person at the institution who made the decision. Let's go for risky alternative number one, where we might lose all of the company's money. Plus, decision makers at large corporations can point to not just other companies using Cardano, but whole nation states using Cardano, since we're now getting updates on things like this. Here is an article about the Education of Ministry in Ethiopia rolling out the digital school IDs. And they point out that there's a contract with the executives of Input Output the developer of the Cardano blockchain, and the Ministry of Education of Ethiopia to provide 5 million students and 750,000 teachers in 3,680 schools with digital ID cards. We know it's a little bit more complicated than that just because we're probably more familiar with what a Tala Prism can do and what Cardano's digital identity solutions can do, but this is good enough for what's probably a mainstream kind of publication. The interesting part, though, is the scope of the project identified just for this year in this article. They say officials hope to see 500,000 IDs issued by the end of this year. This is an article from September of 2022. So if BMW can point, if some decision maker at a large company like BMW Global can point to a project like this with a nation state and say, hey, obviously Cardano can handle the proof of registration of our vehicles because they can handle issuing 500,000 IDs in between now and the end of the year in a country like Ethiopia, not just a corporation, but in a nation state like Ethiopia. Cardano can handle issuing digital identity for 500,000 people over the course of a handful of months. Much easier for a decision maker at a large global company like that to decide to go with Cardano. No risk of slashing, where apparently, according to rumor, BMW is planning on investing in the blockchain as well as using it for this proof of registration solution. Much easier for any decision maker to come down on the side of Cardano. No slashing, and Cardano has experience planning and executing a large rollout of a large number of digital identities in a whole nation state, not just within one corporation. One of the most important things you should be worried about with any blockchain is the security leg of the blockchain trilemma. Decentralization and scalability are important, but if we're relying on the blockchain to do transactions in some kind of unit of account and we care about the stability of the value in that unit of account, then security of the blockchain should be very important to us. So you should be thinking about how Cardano protects itself from the equivalent of a 51% attack. I say the equivalent because we're in proof of stake, not proof of work, but this article gives you the answer. Occasionally we get great articles from Cardanians.io explaining fairly technical things about the Cardano blockchain, and this is one of those great articles. So if you've been curious, how does Cardano protect itself from 51% attacks? This is the article for you. And here in the too long didn't read section, we can see some of the highlights. Cardano uses the longest chain rule that is similar to Bitcoin's rule. The plenitude rule is used against long range attacks. They give you a great straightforward explanation of the plenitude rule. And they also say if private keys used to sign blocks are erased, attempting to overwrite the history of the blockchain is impossible. And they give you a great explanation of why that is the case, including how key evolving signatures work in Cardano and why stake pools have to rotate keys occasionally. So if you've been curious about how Cardano avoids the equivalent of a 51% attack, I highly suggest reading this article. Look at it. It's not that long, and it's written in simple, easy to understand language. Finally, our attack on the ocean is progressing even more. You'll remember in the analogy of the island, the pond, and the ocean, the island is Cardano. The pond on the ocean is Ethereum and the EVM world and the Solidity world. And the ocean is all of the rest of the programming world, all the rest of the coding world, all the rest of the languages that aren't Solidity. Cardano wants to reach out and conquer the ocean. We don't want to go over there and conquer the Solidity pond because it's a tiny sliver. The number of programmers who are interested in Solidity or intending to do something in Solidity is a tiny sliver of that ocean of programmers who can create code in all of the other languages possible outside of Solidity, which has currently a special place in crypto. But we want to attack that ocean of coders who are in other languages. It's a much bigger pool to attack. And here we see some great progress on that attack, that striving to conquer the ocean. Here, Alessandro says, didn't expect this to happen so quickly, but Lucid handles Plutus Core natively. There is no longer any dependency on the Haskell libraries. Lucid runs entirely in JavaScript now, where all checks and calculations happen. Minted this Plutus-based NFT, and he gives you a nice screenshot of the code that apparently made that happen. So this is pretty big. If we're choosing really common languages that have a huge number of adherents, JavaScript is a great place to start. And he's saying that Lucid no longer has to rely on the Haskell libraries. It runs entirely in JavaScript. This is fantastic. If we could choose to have some kind of a platform to allow some portion of the ocean to interact with Plutus Core, JavaScript is a fantastic place to work. I've said it before, but this man deserves a medal from the Cardano community. Thank you very much from all of us, Alessandro. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. I believe we are now in fall. It's now autumn for most of the Northern Hemisphere. I think we've passed that date that almost all regions call the end of summer, the beginning of autumn. So I hope you had a fantastic summer. Hope you had a good weekend. I think we're going to have a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.